Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Storytime with Grandma Kate. And Aditi, as you can see, she decided to join us for story time today. But actually, she's just guarding the desk because Leo is down on the floor and she doesn't want him up here. Kind of reminds me of our friend Junie B. Jones and her friend, well, not really her friend, but her classmate May. They don't really get along very well with each other. I think there might be a little jealousy involved. We're going to find out a little bit more about that in today's chapter book. We're going to start chapters 1, 2, and 3 in Junie B. Jones' Cheater Pants. Do you know what it means to cheat? Like cheating means to take something that's not yours and pass it off as if it was, like an idea or like a picture that you've drawn if you copied it from somebody else. Well, in this story, our friend Junie B is going to cheat by copying somebody else's answers. Hi, you want to sit down with me? No? Okay, you want to sit down there? We'll see what she does. But anyway, we're going to see what happens to Junie B because she actually gets caught pretty early in this book. Caught cheating, I mean. So we're going to start off with chapter 1 called A Plus May. And there's a picture of Junie B sitting at her desk. She doesn't look very happy, but May looks pretty satisfied with herself. Satisfied means like, I know I'm smart. And that's kind of how May is. I did a little research. This book was actually written before the Christmas book that I read to you last month. So the relationship between Junie B and May might be a little uncomfortable still. I think if this book was written after that one, they might have been better friends. But you're going to find out in this book, it's still an interesting relationship. So this is how Junie B's journal entry starts. Monday. Dear first grade journal, yesterday was the weekend. The weekend is the nickname of Saturday and Sunday, only I don't know why. Those 2 days zoomed by speedy quick, and that's how come I didn't have any time to do my homework. 'Cause what do I look like, a clock or something? Last night I begged to stay up to do it, but Daddy said no, and he turned off my light. That was not helpful. Now I'm at school and Mr. Scary said to please take out our homework. I feel sickish inside. I hope that Daddy is proud of himself. From Junie B, first grader. Next to me, May got out her homework from her backpack and she put it on her desk. She smoothed out her paper and smiled. I'm sure I'll get another A plus on this one. I get an A plus on all my homework papers, Junie Jones, she said. One time my homework was so perfect, Mr. Scary sent a happy note home to my mom and dad. I did a shrug. Blah, 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 I said back. May did a mad face at me. Then she quick tapped Lenny on the back of his head. Hey, Lenny, did you hear what I just said to Junie Jones? She asked. I told her that I always get A pluses on my homework. Lenny turned around. Please do not touch my hair, May, he said. I used my brand new gel to spike it up today, and I don't want you messing it up. I waved at Lenny across the aisle. I would never touch your hair, Leonard, I said. Your hair looks like an interesting glob of artwork almost, and artwork should always be gawked at. Lenny nodded. Thank you, Junie B. Jones. Do you know what gawking means? Like if you gawk at something, it's like this. Like you like it, but it's like a surprise to you. Oh, like that. You're welcome, Lenny, whose last name starts with an S, I think, I said. After that, I smiled at May, very smuggy. Smuggy is like, smuggy's not a word. Smug is the word, but smuggy would be like that. Lenny likes me way better than he likes her. May squinted her eyes at me. How come you didn't take your homework out yet, Junie Jones, she asked. You're not following directions very well this morning, are you? I did a big breath. Then I quick reached into my backpack and I pulled out a rumpled paper and I pretended it was my homework. There, I said, there's my homework. Now please mind your own beeswax, you snoopy pooper, May. May's face got reddish and flushy. She started to raise her hand to Tattletale, only just then Mr. Scary called her name. May, it's your day to take the attendance sheet to the office, he said. Would you like to come up here and get it, please? Yes, she said, I would love to, Mr. Scary. The attendance sheet is when teachers send the names of the absent children to the office. I do not actually approve of that practice. May hurried to the front of the room. I'm never absent, Mr. Scary, she said. I'm always here. Have you ever noticed that? Huh? Have you ever noticed how I'm always here? Mr. Scary closed his eyes for a second. Yes, May, he said. Believe me, I've noticed. May did a giggle. Also, I'm always punctual, she said. Have you noticed that too? Have you noticed how punctual I am? She smiled at the class. Punctual means on time, everyone, she explained. Last year I was so punctual, I got the Punctual Award. The Punctual Award is an award for the child who is most punctual. Mr. Scary stared at her, and he said to please stop saying punctual. After that, May took the attendance sheet and she skipped to the door. Don't worry, room 1, I will get this attendance sheet to the office all safe and sound, she said real loud. Then everyone who isn't here will get reported to the principal, and that's exactly what they deserve. Mr. Scary did a sigh. Please, May, just go, okay? He said. May did a wave, and then she hurried out the door. After she was gone, I roamed my eyes around the room. All of the children had their homework papers out but me. My insides felt sickish again, because pretty soon Mr. Scary would find out that I didn't do my assignment. I swallowed real hard, and my eyes kept on roaming all around. And then what do you know? They roamed over to May's desk, and surprise, surprise, I saw her homework sitting there. It was right out in plain view, I mean. My heart pounded and pounded at that sight because my brain was getting an idea, that's why. I tapped on my chin, very thinking. And then quiet as a mouse, I pulled May's paper a little closer and I copied what it said. After I got done, I breathed in relief. Whew, because now I had my homework paper. I smiled to just myself, and then I closed my eyes, and I whispered, thank you to May for letting me borrow her homework. Chapter 2 is called Weekend Fun. May got back from the office. She stood at the door and waved again. I did it, everyone. I got the attendance sheet to the office just like I promised. She looked at Mr. Scary. It went very well, too, she said. There were no problems I couldn't handle. Mr. Scary raised his eyes from what he was doing. Okay, well, thank you, May. You can take your seat now, please, he said. But May kept right on talking. At first, I didn't know where to put it, but then the secretary told me to put it in the wire basket, so I followed her directions perfectly, she said. Mr. Scary pointed at her seat. Excellent, he said. Now please go sit down, okay? May didn't pay attention again. When I was in kindergarten, I got an E+ for following directions, she said. E+ is better than excellent. The plus sign means extra, extra excellent. Just then, Mr. Scary stood up, and he took May's hand, and he walked her to her seat. As soon as he went back to his desk, I strained my brain for something to say to her, because I was still happy at May for leaving her homework out. Finally, I tapped on her arm, and I smiled. Welcome back, madam, I said real friendly. May did a frown at me. What kind of crack was that, she said. I just looked at her. Friendly does not come natural to us, I think. It's true, the girls really aren't friendly with each other. I think maybe May was suspicious that Junie was being nice to her. Pretty soon, Mr. Scary stood up at his desk, and then he walked to the board and he wrote these words. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was, and there's a picture of that. I'm going to see if I can fix this light a little bit. There we go. Can you see Mr. Scary? There he is. I used to do that for my kids every day. I'd write something on the board, like a sentence they had to finish. So I'm thinking that was Junie B's homework. Okay, everyone, he said, for your homework over the weekend, I asked you to complete that sentence. Remember? Room 1 nodded. Good, said Mr. Scary, because this morning I'd like for each of you to read your homework paper to the class. And that way we'll find out what our classmates do for enjoyment. Doesn't that sound like fun? Room 1 nodded again. Even if it doesn't sound like fun, you still have to nod. Mr. Scary smiled. We'll go up and down each row until everyone gets a turn. He pointed at Lucille. Lucille, why don't you start us off, he said. Lucille sits in the first row by the window. And last year, me and her were bestest friends. But this year, we're just regular. Lucille stood up and fluffed herself. And then she picked up her paper and she started to read. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was my Richie Nana took me to her expensive beauty salon. And both of us got manicures and pedicures. Mr. Scary looked surprised at that news. You got a pedicure, Lucille? Wow, that's pretty fancy stuff, isn't it? He said. Lucille shrugged. For some people, maybe, she said. She looked down and kept on reading. Also, we each got a papaya fruit facial, and Nana got an herbal body wrap, plus I got a seaweed scalp massage. Mr. Scary stood there for a second, and then he nodded real slow. All righty then, he said. After that, he pointed to Camille. Camille is the sister of Chenille. Those two are twin sets. Camille stood up. This weekend, Chenille and I made a puppet theater out of a cardboard box, and we put on a show for our little brother, Neil. Mr. Scary beamed at that news. Oh, that's great, girls, he said. I'll bet doing a puppet show for your brother was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Not really, said Camille. Neil kept on grabbing the puppets off our hands, and he made them kill each other. We don't like Neil, said Chenille. Neil is a boob, said Camille. Mr. Scary just stood there some more. And then finally he moved on to Roger. Roger was the best one so far. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was I went to get pizza with my dad, and I ate a whole entire anchovy, and I didn't throw up till I was almost home. Room 1 clapped and clapped for that amazing story. Mr. Scary was right. It was fun to learn what our classmates did on the weekend. There's a picture of, which one is this? Roger. Roger is reading his story. Do you like anchovies? I don't like them. They're too salty for me. I put mushrooms on pizza and olives on pizza, but not anchovies. I couldn't wait for it to be my turn, because I love to talk in front of the class, of course. Plus, all I had to do was tell about my weekend, and Mr. Scary would think I did my homework. I put the paper I copied from May onto my desk. I didn't need it after all, because what do you know? Today, I lucked out. I'm going to finish this video with chapter 3 called Twitching. Do you know what twitching is? Twitching is like sometimes if I'm really tired, my eye will twitch, like the muscles will wiggle. Twitching also can be like what a rabbit does with its nose. You know, they twitch. I wonder how Junie B is going to twitch. Let's find out. Finally, we got to the row right next to mine. That is where Jose and Lenny sit. When Jose's turn came, he smiled, very proud. He said on Saturday his daddy bought him brand new soccer shoes, and he wore them to his soccer game. And he kicked the winning goalie with those things. Lenny went next. He said he got brand new hair gel, plus also he got a thickening cream. A thickening cream can make even the thinnest hair feel rich and full, he said. Whoa, I said. Whoa, said Herb and Jose. Whoa is what we say to be supportive. Supportive is like to show that you're listening and paying attention and to make the other person feel better, to help them out, help them feel important. May sits behind Lenny. She stood up and she read her paper real loud. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was, on Saturday, I made a pot in my pottery class. And after that, I was punctual to my ballet class. And the teacher said I danced like a gazelle. You know what a gazelle is? It's a beautiful animal with long legs. It kind of looks like a deer, but it's bigger. And they are beautiful, graceful animals. Google gazelle. I think you'll like what you see. Mr. Scary did a chuckle. A gazelle, huh? He said. A gazelle is a very graceful animal, isn't it? Yes, said May. Would you like to see me do a few steps? After that, she ran to the front of the room and she started to ballet. But Mr. Scary said to please sit down again. As soon as she got back, I jumped right up. My turn, I said, real thrilled. I tapped on my chin. Okay, well, let's see now. On Saturday, my grandpa Frank Miller came to babysit me, and he let me roller skate in the house. Plus, also, he let me jump on Mother's bouncy bed. Only pretty soon I got very pooped, and so I ran into the kitchen, and I drank chocolate milk right out of the carton, without even a glass, I mean. Whoa, said Herb. Whoa, said Lenny and Jose. Mr. Scary raised his hand to interrupt me. Excuse me, Junie B, he said. It sounds like you had a great time on Saturday, but I'm wondering why you're not reading from your homework paper. Just then my heart got pounding and nervous, because I should have thought about that problem. I swallowed real hard. Let's see, I said real quiet. Why aren't I reading? Mr. Scary smiled. It's all right, he said. You can start over. Just take out your paper and read us what you wrote. After that, I stood there very frozen, and I couldn't even move. Mr. Scary crossed his arms at me. You do have a homework paper, don't you, Junie B? He asked next. I stood there a little longer. And then finally, I reached into my desk, and I pulled out the homework I copied from May. I waved it in the air, kind of weakish. Here it is, I said. Here's my homework paper. See, it's right here. Mr. Scary nodded. Yes, good. Now, could you please read it for us? He asked. I took a deep breath. And then I looked down at my paper, and I read it silently, just to myself. Okay, done, I said. After that, I quick sat down, and I stuffed the paper back in my desk. Mr. Scary came back to where I sit. He said, could he please see my paper? I felt shaky and sickish inside. Very slow, I took out my paper again and I handed it over. After he read it, he shook his head. He took my hand and he walked me into the hall. It seems that you and May had very similar weekends, doesn't it, Junie B? He said. I did a gulp. Yes, I said, it does. Mr. Scary read my paper once more. So you take a pottery class, do you? He said. I rocked back and forth on my feet. Yep, I do, I said. I take a pottery class and I make little, I make pots. Mr. Scary breathed real deep. And let's see, you take a ballet class too, huh? He said. And gee, what a coincidence. On Saturday, your teacher said you danced like a gazelle, I said very fast. Gazelle, said Mr. Scary. Whatever, I said. My teacher sucked in his cheeks and looked at the paper again. And you were punctual too, he said. That's amazing, isn't it? I looked up at him. Well, not if you get an early start, I said real soft. Mr. Scary bent down next to me. His face was not jolly. Junie B. Jones, do you have any idea how disappointed I am in you right now? Just then tears came into my eyes, and I didn't even expect that trouble. I quick hung my head so he couldn't see. Sorry, he said. Sorry you're disappointed. Do you know what that means if Mr. Scary is disappointed? He doesn't like her behavior. He feels very sad about it. Like it's, he didn't expect her to do that. It's kind of like disappointment. Sometimes for me, when I feel disappointed, it's a mix up of being angry and sad at the same time. Like sometimes I'll bet you if mom or dad say you're going to do something and then at the last minute they change their mind and say they can't for whatever reason, you'd feel disappointed. You'd feel sad that you weren't going to do it, maybe a little angry because you were looking forward to it. I think Mr. Scary's disappointed because he knows what she did. Yeah, Mr. Scary took a big breath. He said we would talk more at recess, and then he gave me a tissue from his pocket, and I wiped my tears. After that, we went back into the room, and I sat down at my desk very slumping, because what do you know? No luck after all. I'm thinking Junie B. Jones knew, I think she knew she was in trouble when he asked to see her paper. I mean, like even before he asked her to go out into the hallway, because it says when he asked to see the paper, she felt shaky and sickish. Do you think that she knew already that it wasn't right to copy May's paper? She knew Mr. Scary would know it wasn't her work. So you're going to have to stay tuned to our next video to find out what happens when Junie B's teacher talks to her about it a little more. What do you think might happen? I want to talk to mom and dad about it and tune into our next story time to find out. So until I see you then, have a great day.